Hello everybody, we are here again at Sunset Station with Chuck Esposito, Director of Racing Sports. And Chuck, it's the best time of year for hockey fans. It's playoff season. We wanted to get your thoughts.
The Stanley Cup playoffs are unbelievable, guys. I mean, when you think about overtime and how it's sudden death and the excitement, and I think more than any other sport, you look at the postseason, and just because you might be a wild card or a 7 or 8 seed, you can always pull off that big upset. I think there's a lot more parity. The teams are a lot more closer together than you would think. And this time of year, if you're a hockey fan, is unreal. And think about it. An expansion team, the Vegas Golden Knights. That's right, the Vegas Golden Knights won the Pacific Division. They're one of the 2 best teams in the West. And they host their first playoff game Wednesday night at T-Mobile.
Chuck, for hockey fans and non-hockey fans alike, who are some of your favorites that you're hearing going into the playoffs?
I think when you look at the favorites, you look at Tampa in the East and how well they've played. They're a veteran bunch. They've got a good goaltender. They played in the final a couple of years ago and got beat by the Blackhawks. They're a very good team. Boston had a chance at being the number 1 seed and kind of let it get away from them the last day of the regular season, a game they could have won or should have won at home. You've got the defending 2-time champions, Pittsburgh Penguins, who are back in it again. So they definitely have a chance as well. And I think you look out west, and the team that I think is really good is Nashville. They were so close last year. You know, you have to remember that Nashville was a number 8 seed last year. They were a wild card team. And who did they beat? The number 1 seeded Chicago Blackhawks, who had the best record in the West. So you think about that a little bit when you talk about parity on the National Hockey League. And of course, Vegas. Vegas had that hot start during the season, cooled off a little bit the second half of the season, starting to get a little bit healthier, but everything gets ratcheted up in the postseason. I think there's some great matchups in round 1.
Now, Chuck, on the flip side, who's maybe 1 or 2 teams that nobody's really talking about?
And there's a lot of parity when you look at the Stanley Cup playoffs, but if I was looking for maybe 2 sleeper teams in each conference or 1 in each conference, I'd say in the Eastern Conference, I'd look at Columbus. They're a very young team that can score. They've got a lot of talent on that team. I'm going to say Columbus, I think, could pull off a first-round upset. And in the West, I'm looking at the Minnesota Wild. The Wild are a good defensive team. They're really good at home. They've got a great goalie in Dubnyk, and I think they're a team, their style of play, that if they can get past Winnipeg, I think there's a team that can make a little noise in the Western Conference.
Now, everyone's favorite here in Vegas. Chuck, do you want to talk about the Golden Knights a little bit and their magical run?
The Golden Knights have been just an unbelievable story, guys. I've been fortunate enough to go to a number of games, and the atmosphere and the excitement in T-Mobile, I think, surpassed everybody's expectations. This first round, I think, is a great matchup. If you had to come up with who's Vegas' rival going to be before the season started, I think everyone would have said, let's hope it's the LA Kings. And I think that's happened. They split their 4 games this year, each team winning 1 game, and then each team winning another game in overtime. The Kings won the last 2 games. Vegas could have put them away in the third matchup. They had a 3-1 lead late, lost that game. I think it's a tremendous matchup. These 2 teams, you've got a really good goalie on the Kings side too, and Jonathan Quick, who's got 3 Stanley Cup rings. You've got Fleury for Vegas. They're a veteran team. They're big. They're defensive. But I think, you know, when you look at how well Vegas plays at home, it's going to be a great matchup. And I expect our handle on these games to be phenomenal industry-wide.
Chuck, the Vegas Golden Knights are getting a lot of attention both nationally and locally. Speaking from the local side, we want to know the Vegas perspective. How is that affecting you here in the sports books?
I think when you look at the action in our sports books, guys, nothing is compared to what Vegas has generated. There's been some games where it's the largest handle that night on the board. It even surpassed that of a pro football game early in the season. So it's just been great that we put props up and it's on the big screen and people ask about it. And there's viewing parties at many of our properties, and including here at Sunset on Sunday night. But I look at the other teams in the league as well, and there's a lot of popular teams. The fact that you've got the defending champion Pittsburgh Penguins in it, you've got a few teams from Canada that are in it that have created a lot of buzz and excitement as well, both Toronto and Winnipeg. And overall, you've seen a dramatic spike in our handle, but again, nothing compares to a night when the Vegas Golden Knights are playing.
Chuck, we want to talk about the STN Sports app. Beyond just winners and losers, can you talk about any of the prop bets or any action that people can have on the playoffs?
When it comes to prop bets, it's so much fun when it comes to this time of year for the Stanley Cup playoffs. Of course, you're going to have the game itself and a number of different options as far as the over or under, puck line on the games. You can bet teams to win in the exact number of games. You can bet the series, who will win the best of 7 series, who's going to win the conference, who's going to win the cup. And then, of course, for every Vegas Golden Knights game, guys, there is going to be a page of fun props. So you may not like them in that particular game, but maybe you like Carlson or Marchand or somebody else or Neil to get on the scoreboard that night. So a lot of cool stuff to bet on when it comes to the playoffs, but especially each and every game for the Vegas Golden Knights.
That's great. Now, Chuck, any final thoughts heading into these NHL playoffs?
I'm a big hockey fan, guys, and I think when you look at the NHL playoffs, there's not a more exciting postseason because of the overtime format. When a game goes into overtime and you know the next goal wins, especially if it's in the second or third overtime, it's fun to watch. I mean, you can't leave the TV because it is what it is. You can't leave the arena because you could miss that one goal. So if you haven't experienced the playoffs before in hockey, you have to watch them, and hopefully it's exciting for the Vegas Golden Knights as well.
We are certainly looking forward to the playoffs here in Las Vegas. Chuck, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys, for having me on.